Evelyn Martin sat on the edge of her neatly made bed, holding a framed photo of her late husband, Richard. Her fingers slowly traced the outline of his smile, something she hadn't seen in nearly 3 years. This weekend would have been their 45th wedding anniversary. Instead of spending it with him, she was heading to Paris alone to visit the cafe where he proposed. She took a deep breath and placed the frame back on the nightstand. Then she stood up, smoothed out her navy blue coat, and glanced around the room to make sure everything was in order. The morning sun peeked through the curtains, casting a soft golden light over her room. Evelyn grabbed her purse and suitcase and quietly walked downstairs. She didn't want to wake anyone, not her son Daniel, not his wife Vanessa. They had been staying in her house for almost a year now, ever since Daniel lost his job. At first, Evelyn welcomed them in with open arms, but lately, something had shifted. Vanessa had become colder, short-tempered. She barely spoke to Evelyn except to comment on the food or criticize how outdated the house looked. And Daniel, her only son, had started agreeing with her. Evelyn tried not to take it personally. She told herself they were just stressed. Still, it hurt. Every time Vanessa rolled her eyes behind her back. Every time Daniel sat silently when his wife made a cruel joke. Evelyn noticed everything. But she stayed quiet. Maybe she thought they'd eventually move out and get back on their feet. Outside, the taxi driver honked once. Evelyn slipped on her shoes, opened the front door, and wheeled her suitcase outside. The air was crisp and cool. She climbed into the back seat, gave the driver a polite smile, and they were off. "Charles de Gaulle Airport, please," she said softly. The driver nodded. "Should be there in about 35 minutes, ma'am." As they drove through the quiet neighborhood, Evelyn gazed out the window, watching families walking their dogs and kids riding bikes. She thought about how much things had changed. Her house used to feel like a home. But now, it felt like she was walking on eggshells in her own kitchen. Still, she was looking forward to Paris. It wasn't just a trip. It was something Richard always wanted her to do if he passed first. "Go back to the cafe, Evie," he had told her on one of his last good days. "Have a croissant. Sit at our table. And don't cry too long." She smiled at the memory. For once, she felt a bit of peace. But suddenly, something hit her. Her passport. She gasped quietly and started searching her purse in a mild panic. It wasn't there. She checked again. Still no passport. Her heart raced. She looked through her coat pocket, the side of her suitcase, the inside pocket of her travel bag. Nothing. She closed her eyes, took a breath, and leaned forward. "Excuse me," she said to the driver. "I'm terribly sorry, but I think I left my passport at home. Could we turn around?" The driver made a quick U-turn. "No problem, ma'am. We're not too far." Evelyn felt a strange mix of frustration and relief. She couldn't believe she had forgotten it. But at least she remembered before getting to the airport. She smiled awkwardly to herself. Richard would have laughed. "Classic Evie," he would have said. 10 minutes later, they pulled up in front of the house again. Evelyn paid the driver half the fare and said, "I'll just be a moment. I'll call another taxi once I have it." She walked up to the house, keys in hand. The morning breeze ruffled her scarf as she slid the key into the lock and opened the front door. The house was quiet, but not empty. As she stepped inside, she heard voices. At first, she thought Daniel and Vanessa were watching TV. But the tone was wrong. It was hushed, tense, too real. She paused at the bottom of the stairs. The voices were coming from the living room. She was just about to call out when she heard her name. "Well, once she's gone," Vanessa's voice said sharply, "we'll transfer everything over to us. That's the plan. She's not even thinking clearly these days." Evelyn froze. "She's old," Vanessa continued. "She doesn't know where she puts half her stuff. Daniel, if we act soon, no one will question it." Then came Daniel's voice, quieter but agreeing. I mean, she's still sharp sometimes. But you're right. If she forgets things, we can use that." "Use what?" "Use her?" Evelyn's heart dropped. Her hand shook. She clutched the stair railing to steady herself. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Vanessa laughed softly. "It's not cruel, it's just smart. The house is ours eventually anyway. She's just dragging it out." Evelyn's chest felt tight. This wasn't just about impatience. They were planning something. Something calculated. Something cruel. She looked down at her purse. Her phone was still in there. Without making a sound, she slowly pulled it out, unlocked it, and pressed the red record button. She held the phone low by her side, still standing in the hallway, not making a single sound. She couldn't believe this was real. Her son, her daughter-in-law, plotting to take the house from her, talking like she was already gone, calling her forgetful, saying she was dragging it out. Evelyn's breathing stayed calm, but inside she was trembling. Then Vanessa's voice cut deeper. If she dies while she's away, all the better. No problems. We'll act fast. Evelyn gasped softly. She nearly dropped her phone. This wasn't just about property anymore. It was about erasing her, pushing her out, one way or another. She backed away slowly, her footsteps barely audible on the wooden floor. She stepped out of the hallway and into the kitchen without them noticing. Her eyes filled with tears, but not from fear. From betrayal. She turned off the recording, put the phone back in her purse, and wiped her face with her sleeve. Then, as if nothing had happened, she quietly went up to her room, picked up the passport from her dresser, and came back down. This time, she didn't call for a taxi. She called her lawyer. And the next chapter of her life was going to start with one quiet recording and a very loud truth. Evelyn sat in the back of the same taxi she had called earlier, but this time she wasn't headed to the airport. Her hands rested in her lap, calm on the outside, but inside her world was shaking. She stared out the window without really seeing anything. Her thoughts were racing. Her heart wasn't broken, it was crushed. The sound of Vanessa's voice still echoed in her ears. Once she's gone, we'll transfer everything. And worse, Daniel, her son, had agreed. She wanted to cry, to scream, to confront them right then and there. But something inside her, maybe all those years of raising a family, of watching people closely, of surviving grief, told her to wait. To be smart. To listen more before speaking. Her phone was still recording, just in case. When she reached the law office, her lawyer, Mr. Anderson, looked surprised to see her. "Evelyn," he said, standing up from behind his polished oak desk. "Is everything all right?" She gave a small, tired smile and sat down across from him. "No," she said. "But I'm not here to fall apart. I'm here to protect what's mine." She placed the phone on his desk and played the recording. Vanessa's voice came through clearly. "She's old. She's forgetful. We'll just push her out quietly. No need for a fight." Daniel's voice followed. "Yeah. It's easier than I thought. She won't even know what hit her." The lawyer's eyebrows slowly rose. When it ended, there was a long pause. Then Mr. Anderson leaned forward. "Evelyn, this is serious. You need to act immediately." Evelyn nodded. "What they don't know," she said quietly, "is that Richard updated his will before he passed. I want to know, am I fully protected?" Mr. Anderson stood up and walked to a filing cabinet. He pulled out a thick manila folder, opened it, and flipped through a few documents. Then he smiled gently. "Absolutely," he said. "Richard made sure of it. You have full legal ownership of the house and all attached properties. There's even a special clause preventing anyone from challenging your mental fitness unless cleared by 2 independent doctors and a judge." Evelyn let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Then Mr. Anderson added something that made her sit straighter. "And you remember the name Judge Harrison?" "Yes," she said. "Richard's friend. He's the trustee named in the will. If anyone tries anything unethical with the estate, he steps in." Evelyn blinked slowly. Vanessa and Daniel had no idea. They thought she was weak, tired, forgetful. But she wasn't. She had everything on her side, the law, the will, and now proof. "I want them out," she said, her voice steady. "I want to do this by the book. No yelling. No scenes. Just justice." Mr. Anderson nodded. "We'll begin immediately." That same day, he contacted Judge Harrison, who was still very much active in retirement. Once he heard the recording, he didn't even hesitate. "They're out," he said firmly. She shouldn't spend one more night under the same roof with people planning to erase her. Within 24 hours, emergency motions were filed. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about anger. It was about safety. And Evelyn didn't tell anyone what she was doing. She returned home that afternoon like nothing had happened. She made herself tea, read the newspaper, and smiled politely at Vanessa when she walked into the kitchen. Vanessa barely looked up. "Still going to Paris?" Evelyn nodded. "Decided to postpone it. Forgot a few things. Might go next week." Vanessa gave her a fake smile. "Good idea." Daniel didn't speak to her at all that night. He seemed distant. Guilty, maybe. Or maybe just too comfortable in his own selfish world to even realize what was coming. The next morning, the doorbell rang. Vanessa opened the door in her robe and slippers. Standing outside were 2 uniformed officers, a courier holding an envelope, and an older gentleman in a gray suit, Judge Harrison. Vanessa's face went pale. Daniel came downstairs, rubbing his eyes. "What's going on?" he asked. The officer stepped forward. "Daniel Martin, Vanessa Martin, you are hereby served with legal eviction documents. You have 48 hours to vacate the premises." Vanessa's mouth dropped open. "What? This is our home." "It's not," Judge Harrison said calmly. "You were guests. And now you are no longer welcome. Evelyn owns this house, fully and legally. And you were recorded plotting to take it from her." Daniel looked at his mother, standing at the bottom of the staircase, silent. "You recorded us?" he said, voice cracking. Evelyn didn't answer. She didn't need to. Vanessa tried to argue. "You can't do this. You can't just throw us out." But she was shaking. The confidence in her voice had vanished. Judge Harrison handed her the envelope. "You'll find all the paperwork inside, including a cease and desist order preventing either of you from contacting Evelyn without legal approval." Vanessa's hands trembled. Daniel's face was blank. Evelyn looked at her son. "Do you remember what Dad used to say?" she said softly. "He always said, 'What's built on lies will fall apart in silence.'" Daniel looked away. Vanessa stormed upstairs, slamming doors. But the law had spoken. Evelyn returned to the kitchen, poured herself a fresh cup of tea, and sat at the table. For the first time in months, the house felt still, like it belonged to her again. She didn't need to scream or fight. She had waited. She had listened. And now she had won. For the next 2 days, Evelyn didn't leave the house. Not because she was hiding. Not because she was afraid. She simply wanted to witness the moment when the people who tried to erase her would walk out of her home. The home her husband built with love, not greed. Vanessa barely spoke after receiving the eviction papers. Her confident voice had been replaced by silence, her sharp tongue by slamming doors. She stopped cooking, stopped looking Evelyn in the eye, and barely left the guest room. Daniel, on the other hand, kept pretending everything was fine. He walked around the house like nothing had happened, drinking coffee from Evelyn's favorite mug, flipping through the channels on her TV, and even leaving his dirty shoes on the carpet she vacuumed that morning. Evelyn said nothing. She had already said everything she needed to, without uttering a word. Still, inside her, something ached. Not because they were leaving, but because her son, the boy she raised, loved, fed, taught, protected, had joined in the plan to push her out. At night, she sat in the armchair Richard used to nap in. She pulled an old knit blanket over her legs and stared out the window, watching the streetlights glow like tiny stars. Her eyes stung, but she didn't cry. She had already shed enough tears when she heard Daniel's voice on that recording. She's old, she won't even see it coming. On the second day, with 12 hours left until the legal deadline, Evelyn knocked on the guest room door for the first and only time. Vanessa opened it halfway. She looked like a stranger now, hair messy, eyes red, still wearing the same sweatshirt she had 2 days ago. Evelyn didn't step inside. She just stood there, holding a folded sheet of paper. "I want you to have this," Evelyn said calmly. "It's a copy of the recording. You'll probably hear it again in court. But I want you to listen to it yourself first." Vanessa didn't take the paper. She just stared, lips pressed tight. "I gave you my home," Evelyn continued. "And all you gave me was plans to erase me. I just want you to know I heard every word." Then Evelyn turned and walked away. She never saw Vanessa cry. But an hour later, she heard a suitcase zip. Downstairs, Daniel stood by the kitchen sink, washing a single mug. He had been doing it for 5 minutes. Over and over. As if he could scrub away the past 2 days. Evelyn entered the kitchen slowly, her steps soft, deliberate. Daniel looked up and tried to smile. "Hey, Mom. Do you want coffee?" Evelyn looked at him quietly. Her face didn't change. "Do you want to tell me why?" she asked. His smile faded. "Why what? Why you agreed with her? Why you didn't stop her?" Daniel dropped the mug in the sink with a loud clank. "I didn't mean it. We were just talking. I didn't know she'd actually." "You didn't stop her," Evelyn cut in. Her voice wasn't angry. Just tired. "You didn't even pause. You agreed." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "It wasn't like that. She was upset. She was talking crazy. You called me confused," Evelyn whispered. Daniel froze. "You said I forget things. That I was dragging it out. I trusted you, Daniel." She turned away slightly. "When your father died, you cried in my arms. You promised me you'd take care of me. And then you tried to take everything from me instead." Daniel opened his mouth. Closed it. He didn't have words. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Mom. It just Felt like the house would be ours one day anyway. We thought. We. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. Daniel looked down. I thought, maybe you didn't need all of it. We could renovate. Sell. Start fresh. Evelyn stepped closer. I didn't need you to decide that. Your father and I built this house one brick at a time. We didn't build it for shortcuts. Or betrayal. Daniel's voice cracked. Are you going to press charges? Evelyn took a deep breath. I should, she said. But I won't. Because even though you turned your back on me, I won't turn into what you became. She walked to the sink, grabbed the wet mug, and set it on the counter. You have 6 hours left. Pack. The eviction deadline came just before sunset. Vanessa left first, dragging 2 heavy suitcases behind her. She didn't say goodbye, didn't look back, just walked to the car that was waiting at the curb and slammed the door. Daniel followed behind, slower. He paused on the porch, staring at the flower pot Evelyn had watered every morning since Richard's death. I really didn't think you'd hear us, he said, almost a whisper. Evelyn didn't reply. He looked up. Is there any chance you'll forgive me? Evelyn studied his face. Then she gave him a soft smile. A sad one. Maybe, she said. But not today. She closed the door. Locked it. Then leaned her back against it as silence filled the hallway. No more footsteps upstairs. No more angry whispers behind closed doors. No more strangers pretending to be family. Just Evelyn. And peace. Later that evening, Judge Harrison called to check in. Everything went smoothly, Evelyn told him. Good, he replied. And if you need anything else, legal help, emotional support, even a good bottle of wine, you call me. Evelyn chuckled. I'll keep that in mind. As she hung up the phone, she walked to the living room and picked up the photo of Richard again. I kept my promise, she whispered. I stayed strong. And for the first time in what felt like forever, she slept soundly. Because she didn't just win. She survived. Evelyn stood in the kitchen the morning after Daniel and Vanessa left. The house felt still. No dishes in the sink. No music blasting from the guest room. No sarcastic comments floating from the living room. For the first time in months, it was just quiet. She walked to the living room window and looked out at the garden. The sunlight touched the petals of her rose bushes, the same ones Richard had planted for her 30 years ago. She stepped outside in her slippers, kneeled by the flowers, and began pulling weeds. It felt strange. Not because she was alone, but because she finally felt safe in her own home. When she came back inside, she noticed a mug on the kitchen table. It was clean but still damp. Daniel must have left it behind in a rush. She picked it up and held it in her hands. It wasn't the mug that mattered. It was the memory behind it. The way he used to run to her every morning as a boy, shouting, "Mama, hot cocoa." That boy was gone. But she still loved him. She just couldn't trust him anymore. She placed the mug in a box marked charity, along with a few other items they'd left behind. Things that didn't belong anymore. Clothes, books, some perfume bottles. A few jewelry boxes Vanessa had stashed in Evelyn's closet when she first moved in. Ones she never asked to get back. Evelyn wasn't angry anymore. She had gone beyond that. What she felt now was calm. And focus. She walked to the study, Richard's old room, and opened the drawer of the oak desk. Inside was the will. She had read it many times, but today she opened it with purpose. She took a pen and gently crossed out a few lines. Then she began writing a letter. Not a legal one. A personal one. It read, "To whoever reads this after I'm gone, this house was not just a home. It was a promise. A symbol of hard work, love, and trust. If you want to inherit what's inside it, you must live by the values that built it. If you betray those values, you lose it all." She folded the letter and slipped it into the will folder, right behind the last page. A few days later, Evelyn called Mr. Anderson, her lawyer, and made an appointment. When she arrived at his office, she wasn't dressed in grief or gray. She wore a crisp navy dress, a silk scarf, and had her silver hair pinned up neatly. She walked with confidence, her back straight, her steps measured. "You look different today," Mr. Anderson said, smiling as she entered. "I feel different," Evelyn replied. "I'm ready to rewrite my will." He nodded and pulled out a blank document. Evelyn leaned forward. "I want to remove Daniel as my heir." Mr. Anderson hesitated. "Are you sure?" Evelyn looked him directly in the eye. "I gave him my trust. He tried to sell it. Now I'm taking it back." She paused. "But I also want to make something clear. I'm not doing this out of revenge. I'm doing it to protect what matters." He nodded. Understood. They worked for the next hour, line by line. By the end of the meeting, Daniel and Vanessa were fully removed from all claims to her estate. In their place, a scholarship fund. Evelyn created the Richard Martin Memorial Grant for young adults who had no family, no help, and no way forward. Kids who wanted to go to college, but didn't have support. If I can't trust my own son, Evelyn said, then maybe I can at least help someone who deserves it. 1 week later, Evelyn finally went to Paris. She packed lightly. Just one suitcase, one photo of Richard, and a scarf he had given her on their 40th anniversary. When she arrived at the cafe where he once proposed, she didn't cry. She ordered a croissant, just like he told her to. Sat at their old table in the corner by the window, and whispered, "I kept my promise." She watched the people pass outside. Young couples laughing. Parents chasing toddlers. Teenagers scrolling their phones. Life going on, just as it always had. But she had changed. She wasn't the same Evelyn who let others walk over her. She wasn't the same Evelyn who doubted herself when younger voices talked over her. She had faced betrayal, heartbreak, and cruelty, and she came out stronger than before. Back home, the house welcomed her like an old friend. She brewed herself a cup of tea, opened the back door, and let the breeze carry in the scent of fresh-cut grass. Judge Harrison called later that week. "I heard from the court," he said. Vanessa tried to file a complaint. It was dismissed immediately. "She has no claim. Let her try all she wants," Evelyn said. "I have time. And truth." He laughed warmly. "You're tougher than you look." "I always was," she replied. "Just took me a while to remember." A few months later, Evelyn received a letter. It was from Daniel. "Mom, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm still your son. I made a terrible mistake. Vanessa and I are no longer together. I miss you. I miss home. I'm so sorry." Evelyn read it twice. Then she folded it up and placed it in a drawer. She didn't tear it up. But she didn't reply either. Forgiveness isn't something you give away easily. Not when someone tried to take your entire life behind your back. Maybe one day. But not yet. Evelyn continued living her life quietly and peacefully. She volunteered at the local library. She began a gardening club in her neighborhood. She even hosted dinners again. Real ones, where the smiles were warm and real, not fake and forced. People asked her how she stayed so calm, so kind after what happened. She would simply smile and say, "Kindness isn't weakness. It's strength with self-respect." And when she walked through her home, she no longer tiptoed. She no longer second-guessed where she belonged. Because she knew this was her home, and no one was ever going to take it from her again.